So you want to eat a person. Assumedly you don't want to get in trouble for it, so you can't just kill someone and eat them, because murder is obviously illegal. But what if you just stumbled across someone who was already dead before you got there? Could you have a little nibble? Well, in most jurisdictions that would probably fall under some law that prohibits the desecration of a corpse. So yes, even if you've just solved a missing persons case, it would be illegal for you to take a bite of them. The same way it would be illegal to put a firework in their mouth to see what would happen. Now that is not to say it is impossible to consume the flesh of another person within the confines of the law. There are just some barriers to entry. So if you wanted to try out cannibalism, how would you do so legally? The first method, and the only one which I have tried myself, is being Catholic. When Catholics go to Mass, they receive the Eucharist, which comes in the form of wine and a wafer of bread. Through the power of transubstantiation, the bread and wine are transformed into the body and blood of Jesus Christ, respectively, and they are then consumed. The wafer tastes awful, and the wine is wine. Of course, the changing of bread and wine into body and blood is more of a spiritual transformation than a physical or chemical one, and even at that there have been some hotly contested debates over whether there is any transformation at all. So while being Catholic is legal, mostly, the cannibalism you will partake in here is symbolic more than anything. That being said, if you wish to consume a body and its blood, you may want to seek religion. If you wanted something that involves an actual human body, but maybe you weren't yet ready to fully immerse yourself in the world of cannibalism, you could try a sourdough cocktail. The sourdough cocktail is a tradition in Dawson City in the Canadian Yukon. You order a shot of whiskey, they drop in a dehydrated human toe, and you take the sourdough oath. You can drink it fast, you can drink it slow, but your lips must touch that gnarly toe. For most people, I think that would probably be more than enough, but if you wanted to go full cannibalism and consume the toe, well, you can't. Why? Because the bars that do this don't exactly have a surplus of human toes. They receive them by donation, and so will generally only have one or two at any given time that they must reuse for the cocktail over and over. So, if you were to deprive them of their toe, they would not be happy. Patrons are warned not to put the toe in their mouth by penalty of a hefty fine. If you're financially stable enough to be unfazed by the fine, please also consider that swallowing the bar's toe is basically taking away one of the ways in which they make money. Then consider how the bar owners are likely to respond to this. So you might not be able to enjoy the fruits of cannibalism to their fullest extent with a sourdough cocktail, but its existence does raise some interesting questions. If the toes are donated, and it's not illegal to imbibe a beverage containing them, does that mean that I can legally engage in cannibalism as long as whatever I eat was supplied with the consent of its original owner? Armin Meiwes, also known as the Rottenburg Cannibal, was a 40-year-old German man who made international headlines in 2001 for engaging in consensual cannibalism. Meiwes put an ad on the internet seeking someone to be slaughtered and consumed. Meiwes was very upfront about what he wanted and was only looking for willing volunteers. He did not want to overpower or trick anyone. He wanted someone that fully understood and was okay with him eating them. 43-year-old Bernd Brandz accepted this request and met Meiwes at his home, where the two filmed a 4-hour video of the proceedings. First, Meiwes cut a piece off Brandz and the two attempted to eat it, but it was too tough and chewy. It was his weenus. Then Brandz lost consciousness from the blood loss, and Meiwes killed him, dismembered him, stored the pieces in a freezer, and ate him over the next 10 months. He was only discovered when someone reported one of his online ads to the police. There was much interest in his trial over the idea that Brandz had consented to these acts, and that there was video evidence of this. However, the law does not generally view killing as something you can get consent for, and Meiwes was convicted of murder and disturbing the peace of the dead, and given a life sentence. It's interesting that Meiwes was convicted of murder because it implies his case may have turned out differently had Brandz died with no involvement from Meiwes. After all, disturbing the peace of the dead only carries a maximum imprisonment of 3 years. In fact, cannibalism itself is technically legal in Germany, insofar that there are no laws explicitly banning it. Of course, it can fall under desecration of a corpse or disturbing the peace of the dead, as it did in this case, but if you have consent, does it really count as desecration? Germany is not alone in this. Both the UK and the US also do not explicitly prohibit cannibalism, except for the state of Idaho. Idaho is the only state in the US to ban cannibalism. So if you have consent and you don't kill anyone and you're not in Idaho, is it legal to eat people? It sure is. When a woman gives birth, the placenta is expelled as well as the baby. Most hospitals get rid of this themselves, but they may allow you to keep it. Then you can bring it home, cook it up, and eat it with your family. This practice is called Placentophagy, and it's not all that uncommon. And you could do that with anything that's surgically removed from you. Ask the hospital if you can keep it, and there's no law stopping you from eating it. Someone else could legally eat it too, as long as there was consent. Like they didn't just eat your amputated foot without asking you, and you didn't put it into their stew without their knowledge. Of course, this is only true where the act of cannibalism itself is not outright banned, and also, of course, a hospital may, and probably will, refuse to allow you to keep whatever they cut off, for obvious health and safety concerns. This is not always the case though. In 1988, a man had his tonsils removed and was allowed to keep them in a jar of embalming fluid. He immediately called his friend, Canadian artist Rick Gibson, and insisted that he use the tonsils in a work of art. Living in the UK at the time, Gibson decided he would use them in a performance piece. He made canapes with the tonsils and ate one in public. The police could do nothing. You can still find the canapé recipe on his website. He tried a similar stunt with a human testicle back in Canada. In what was presumably a first for the Canadian police, they confiscated the testicle and Gibson was charged with publicly exhibiting a disgusting object or indecent show. However, under forensic examination, the police were unable to determine if the testicle belonged to a human or some other animal, so they had to drop the charges because they couldn't prove Gibson wasn't just eating animal meat, which is obviously not illegal. Gibson then ate the testicle on the steps in front of the Vancouver law courts in full view of the detectives who had previously arrested him. So depending on where you are in the world, your main issue with cannibalism might just be making sure you obtain the meat legally. But maybe you're not interested in being a cannibal, in which case you sure have watched a lot of this video, haven't you? But let's say you're in a situation where you have to rather than want to. Would you still get in trouble? In 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 was carrying 45 passengers and crew when it crashed in the Andes. The plane had been carrying a rugby team and their friends and families to a game, and some of them survived the crash. However, conditions in the mountains were harsh and survivors died off in the following days. Eventually, those who were left were faced with only one choice to survive. They would have to eat the remains of their dead friends. Of course, nobody wanted to do this, but they were going to die if they didn't. Even this was not enough to convince everybody, and some continued to starve. The survivors were all Catholic, and some felt that eating human flesh would lead them to eternal damnation. Eventually, they were convinced by the others, who compared it to the Eucharist. You don't consume Jesus' body and blood because you want to taste it, you do it because you want to be saved. 16 people survived the 2.5-month ordeal, all of which had resorted to cannibalism. There were no legal repercussions. So you will probably get away with cannibalism if it's a necessity to your survival. Once again, murder is the exception. Even if your companion is incapacitated and you will die if you do not eat him, you cannot kill him. In 1884, 4 Brits found themselves adrift at sea in a lifeboat after their yacht was damaged. After a few days, they were starving, and the 17-year-old cabin boy had fallen seriously ill from drinking seawater and was thought to be dying. 2 of the men decided the cabin boy had to die for them to live. They killed him, and all 3 consumed his body. When they were rescued, the 2 men who killed the cabin boy were charged with murder, while the 3rd man, who had only engaged in cannibalism but not the murder, was not prosecuted. So there are various ways in which one can legally partake in cannibalism. Please note that this video was made for entertainment purposes and is not intended as legal advice. Don't do anything on the say-so of someone who is not an expert, and in all actuality is quite dim. I am not a lawyer, or a doctor, or a cannibal. I am just a YouTuber who reads things on the internet. I will not testify in your court case and would be no good to you even if I did. I do make a lot of videos like this one though, so if you enjoyed it, why not watch some more? And why not subscribe to see more videos in the future? You could follow me on Twitter too, but I might be pushing it now. So I'm just gonna say, until next time, stay safe. This practice is called Placentophagy. Placentophagy. This practice is called Placentophagy. No, Placentophagy. Fuck. What the fuck am I even saying? Like, Placentophagy.